It happened in an afternoon. Humankind has been left behind in the wake of the undead. 4 delinquents traverse this world on behalf of their home base, a jail for young offenders. Their assignments are Hail Marys, the last strand of resistance against a superior horror. Navigating the gore-ridden mean streets is suicidal. This journey comes to us by 2 creators working together for the first time, very early in both their careers. They're put to the creative test to bring together a zombie story that will stand out among the others. Kodansha has found them work, but after 10 volumes, where has this project taken their creativity? This is a quick read for young adult men. That's more of a disclaimer than I'd like it to be. If you haven't heard of Fortress of Apocalypse, and might like a wild ride in a zombie-ridden cityscape, give it a try. Kodansha has released it digitally through Crunchyroll. Whatever surprises this material may have to offer will be spoiled with how it will be discussed in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. For sake of convenience, we'll be referring to Fortress of Apocalypse as Fortress. We'll begin by exploring the characters and what weaves them together. Let's also look at the power dynamics that enforce the identity of our core cast. They aren't just convicts. They are Cell 4, a wayward group of badasses. They don't know it yet, but for the sake of this story, they are human resistance incarnate. Cell 4 are a higher ground of humanity, able to challenge the threats that await. Neumann's the brains, Iwakura's the muscle, Yoshioka's a wild card, and Maeda is the kid. Prompted by the new leader of Shuran Detentional Facility, Cell 4 is tasked with retrieval missions in the doomed world outside. Let's break that down a bit. These outings are dangerous and threaten the well-being of Cell 4. Their task of finding Maeda's family is successful, albeit not what the kid wanted. Finding the world in shambles, everyone takes this mission to heart. Family is a reoccurring theme. Here's how it is. Volume 1. Maeda searches for his family. Volume 2. Yoshioka returns to Lucky Hills, his mother's game shop. Volume 3. Iwakura is shown to have a soft spot with his father, and an edge for the man who raised him. We're also treated to little zombie Riku and his father, Shinpei. Volume 4. Hitatsu Kabuto has a flashback revealing his character quirk comes from his connection to the loss of his parents. Volume 5. A flashback within a flashback. Love it. More importantly, Daisy exploits Shuran's inhabitants in a thematically relevant way. She makes a grand gesture of assuring the safety of not only everyone, but their families as well. Remember, it's this lie about family survivors that invites Cell 4's suspicion. Volume 6. There's the father, Shinpei, making a grand stand. There's this offhand monologue. Caught me off guard. Stands out. It really does. We'll get to that later. Corporal Hat is also addressed as father. Volume 7. Daisy thinks Hitatsu Kabuto is her father. The material stresses the sentiment that this relationship is the only thing keeping her alive. Volume 8. Newman's mother is the one who gave him his keen sense of perfection. Volume 9. Riku and his father have a touching moment before Riku saves the day. Also, two Bakor fuse in some new sex and create the big boss monster of the series. Volume 10. The longest thread comes to light. Iwakura's karmic debt to his past life has been fulfilled. He can move away from the father who stole him, and he can now believe in friendship. He hasn't had friends, or a normal childhood since his father died. Died in front of him. As is obvious, matters of family are consistent and make up the most of our cast's given character. Everyone but Kasahara has a connection to the overall theme of familial ties. Kasahara's dead. That's why that stands out. Now that we have an idea of the generation theme, we're halfway to proving that Cell 4 is humanity at its most resistant. Here's what's fucking with them. And there's even a bonus chapter dedicated to this one. In Shuran, Neumann talks down to everyone that he feels superior to. And that's everyone! The others agree physically. They hold themselves above everyone in the fortress, save for one. That single exception is Hitatsu Kabuto, who can see 2 seconds into the future. Cell 4 does what he asks. The man is nigh untouchable. So Cell 4 can hold off zombies. Early in Volume 2, Maeda stands off against a Bokor, and the team survive the frenzied aftermath. The distress is convincing, with a pacing that hits hard with wonderful spatial reveals. It looks like they were overrun, but the success will be consistent. Later in Volume 2, they hold off a zombie horde to give Yoshioka breathing room to play pinball. Cell 4 handles both zombies and Bakors before you really knew either force could be beaten. That's a bit of a shame considering the amount of panels given to the undead menace. In Volume 3, our Cell meets travelers who can deal with these dogs. In the same volume that introduces them, their danger is solved. These travelers also push the story forward by sharing weapons and fulfilling Hitatsu Kabuto's insane request. Among these travelers are a father and son on a hopeless mission to return to their happy lives. Also of note is that Cell 4 doesn't dogmatically stomp little zombie Riku. Cell 4 returns to Shoran with weapons, a zombie, a Bakor, and 2 strangers. The scenario presents dangers that amp up the suspense. It's distracting hype like this that helps to convince the reader into doubting the control of our cast. They hold their own with Hitatsu Kabuto now, leveraging their weapons for the time being. Then, there's a mob that forms just by having Cell 4 near them. Maeda is the weak link in a fight, and that's why Cell 4 loses. This is big. Now we've found Maeda's main arc. He's a fluke. What can he do to be useful? Next, the Bakor controls Riku and massacres the prisoners. There's Maeda's answer. It's teased in front of him and us. The Bakor tried to bleed in his mouth during Volume 3. Having control over Riku hardly stands out given his slaughter of Shoran convicts, but no named characters. It's neat, but the child's threat isn't tested till later in Volume 9. Riku will then move so fast as to catch Hitatsu Kabuto off guard. Now that just doesn't happen. The man sees 2 seconds into the future. The idea is explored while he and others prolong a hopeless situation. Here he can see his imminent defeat. Riku defies his power by coming out of nowhere, wicked fast, before Hitatsu Kabuto can get a read. Thus, Cell 4 with Maeda infected is the most badass, untouchable group in this manga. They have the tools to best anything, and the proposed big bad new point in undead evolution doesn't stand a chance. Maeda is infected in Volume 5. They have everything they need to conquer this realm halfway into the series. They are Cell 4. They are the team that it takes to secure the cure. Zombies are everywhere, but they aren't a threat. Even Neumann becoming a zombie doesn't add to the zombie threat. Neumann dies slowly, by his own hand, on his own terms. He actually uses his infection as an advantage. His bite was subtle, and instead of adding to the shock of the undead conquerors, Neumann is put on a pedestal. It wasn't even zombies that were hassling them. It was debris. Neumann died to clear debris. So, Cell 4 are atop the food chain. They're the most threatening, adaptable beacon of humanity. The story would also like to infer that their path is divine. The context highlights Cell 4 as being chosen. Join the angels and seek redemption through their mercy was Daisy's demand. She and the military troop that accompanied her posed the definitive threat to our cast. This is when Hitatsu Kabuto saw that they were gonna die given less than 2 seconds of fighting back. The militant cult have a weakness, and that's being human, which will prove fatal. I digress. Daisy's philosophy is a burden to argue, but she wasn't much out of touch. She holds the undead in high regard. Daisy is on the hunt for a Bakor, or as she calls it, the Child of Light, more or less worshipping them. Few survived her purge, and she did get to see a savior. It just really wasn't what she had in mind. She wasn't thinking about necromancy. And that's a shame, because necromancy is the core that Fortress plays with but doesn't recognize. We're talking about controlling the dead, hordes of the dead, as there's a new happening destroying humanity and claiming its flesh. They try to explain it away with a pair of viruses, and that's fine, that's what's happening, and that's a surface level insight. People faces on dogs is more necro than bio, but I don't think the creators wanted a context with magic, while practically giving Maeda magical powers. It doesn't matter if he's psychic either. So what I'm proposing is that Daisy summoned Maeda through mass sacrifice, which is more necromancy than biology. Maeda is the Child of Light, and upon his abilities blossoming, he not only offers to fulfill her quest, but her prophecy as well. He joined the angels, and will literally bring redemption, or another chance at life. I digress. Cell 4 is above everything, and there's not too much in lieu of character intrigue to chew on. Iwakura has been given a strange idea of atonement, wherein the wrongdoer faces amputation. His arm is lost during the final battle, which he sorta gives up for Maeda's sake, proving their bond in reference to his origin. It doesn't get any deeper than that. We've touched a lot of the story beats that stand out. Now that we've come this far, let's take a few steps around this material with insights and assumptions. Kodansha Comics has served this project to a newcomer mangaka with a one-shot under his belt that I could find. Kazu Inabe has habits. He has character go-tos. He really likes music. Fortress and his one-shot are both action series for young men. Here, he's placed with a writer to work with. Little things. Neumann gesturing like a conductor and the heavy emphasis on song references show Kazu's touch. The artist was in a partnership that he could influence. The writer in question is Yu Karashi. He is unrecognizably hidden from readers that would know his prior series. A romantic comedy about a teen meeting his wives in potential futures. Yu brings humor and his eye for comedy plays well for surprise page-turning reveals. Other times, like when Daisy's friend is torn apart, the humor may be lost. Look, they're rushing past all the gore, distancing a bunch of low-detail pain. Then boom! Whatever, he's really dead. Nothing like this happens again. I digress. These two are tasked by an editor to make a zombie series that's set in a prison. Kazu is a new artist hungry for work, and Yu is a consistent writer looking for a new project. Fortress was picked up for monthly publication in a Kodansha magazine directed to young men. These two have a month between chapters to focus and make what they can out of the premise they're given. Did this project take them to new creative heights? Yes, for the artist Kazu, and until I read more of his prior series, I honestly can't say for Karashi. Fortress stands out, but it's not that good. Let's nitpick. As stated before, they enforce the power of self-war to the point that by Volume 5, our central cast can work their way past any physical threat. They have to be quick-witted to get around Hitatsu Kabuto in the military, but they get around these forces with a little more than lost time. Sorry, Kasahara, but you didn't matter, and your one shining moment was a Neumann hand-me-down. Neumann is the logical center of Cell 4. He's a core character. I digress, yet again, my apologies. Around Volume 5 and 6, I believe that the creative team are trying to rein the series in. They wanted to switch gears and rely on characters that have grown into their own for this. Maeda's powers blossom to an unbefore-seen state that, in my opinion, set the bar higher than this team could maintain. Here are two reasons for this. One, Kazu has trouble efficiently drawing crazy zombie amalgamations. He's serviceable at heights, action scenes, backgrounds, settings, and layouts, but drawing a rush of bodies is a little beyond his time or ability. The entire horde is bold and lit, showing that they are a mass that makes one being. Then they try angling the creatures to support the weight it has. Without the time or ability to add depth to this beast, it stands out. It's a touch blocky. Thanks to the Bakors, Kazu can give the horde a suspended purpose. Towards the end of the series, Kazu will try a couple different methods to have the horde move fast. They put it on one side of a bridge, give it a face, and play a perspective trick. It was awesome. Nevertheless, it's evident to my eyes that this team worked together and geared the story to suit each other's strengths. But number two, these creators don't know where else to go. When Maeda's powers conjure 4 story-tall flowers of corpses that save the lives of his friends, a sense of whimsy is set. The later reinforcement of the science behind the setting does little to change it. The fusing of 2 Bakor, sexual and curious, and the subsequent psychic sequence with Maeda hardly convey a similar weightless surrealism. This is where we're dwelling, because Iwakura waking up and climbing out of this shaft of corpses is by far the most interesting height Fortress can reach. It's a scene above every tension escalating context before and after. Kazu constantly reinforces a sense of being walled in. Walls of zombies all the time. Zombies aren't a threat as of the end of Volume 2, so while it's good to be reminded, they're purely aesthetic. The seal-faced creeps are so effective, while not directly threatening, off-putting in a meme that fits the biology theme. The seals and Maeda's powers show off the environment. In Fortress's terms, I'd like to propose that the seals show off the M virus, while there's more payoff in showing Maeda's use of the F virus. For those who don't know, M virus makes zombies, and F virus makes Bakors. M for mother, and F for father. For the final battle, Maeda uses his powers to operate a giant man made of humans. People becoming giant people expanding human flesh with unknown powers from a force that threatens humanity. I can see why they went there, why they did this, why this ought to be exciting. It's craziness like that makes me think these two would have been better off with necromancy instead of viruses. This isn't science, and the viruses only exist to separate enemies and suggest a cure. Either way, we're given a final battle that demands you string his characters together and Kazu to draw a fully realized Maeda and final Bakor. Because you need a final round, because it's action and horror, right? Yu doesn't have the characters he'll need, and he frankly doesn't risk them. He kills off Neumann, I get it, but he doesn't risk them. They just watch on the sidelines while Yu works what he can out of Iwakura and Maeda. Kazu goes from enveloping the reader and characters in a flower to showing them a body that Kazu can't use. A finale that echoes Self4's last defeat of the first Bokor, right before the military arrive. While the creative team are pushing their concepts, their execution falls short. A quick digression, but they stand out to me. Daisy, Sakagami, and Neumann's mom. There you go. Yoshioka's mother is well done for not even having a body, held in memory. She's hugely important to him, and the series ends marking his connection to her. And the Bokor counts, I suppose, but it exists as a female because of its sex, its physical body. Daisy was promising. She added a spiritual element. It's frustrating that Daisy stops developing after a huge character change. She goes from confidently massacring Shuren inhabitants to being reduced to an indignant puddle. Daisy goes from an interesting character to a reason to put the book down. Compare her to Neumann's mom, a psychotic woman lost in her own world. While Neumann's mom is a great addition to his origin, she feels little more than that. She doesn't stand tall while instilling a love of perfection in her son. It's a key characteristic of his that he holds close. Settle on Sakagami, who's really on the level. She's useless in combat and fits the two-faced direction of the prior ladies. Loosely, Sakagami drugs our cast out of fear that they'll refuse her more than painful treatments. Aside from the setup being bankrupt, anyone really knows that surgery doesn't start with a hammer to the face. Whatever, she has crude tools. Sakagami is arguably the most important person in the grand scheme of things. She holds little power over others, adds little more to dialogue than science, and on that note, doesn't add a layer to the greater context. She reminds us of Fortress's scientific basis, but hardly expands on it. Sex is pushed. There's nothing concrete to be said. Her inclusion doesn't lead to anything that surprises me. She is the most believable cast member to be able to solve the undead problem. That's that. We're given 3 females, and they are two-faced in different ways, and the one female Bokor is just physically female and hardly carries a character beyond that. Even the Bokor's fusing, and some excuse for sex, a scene that accents Sakagami's dead lover. Even then, the theme falls flat for me. Even with the finale at stake, the exploration of sex and the final accumulation of the evolution theme doesn't pay off. Just get a giant body and bash it. Lastly, a rant on the downside of this project wouldn't be complete without committing some time to the home base, Shuren. It's the reoccurring environment. We're reminded of how many people have survived inside of it. Shuren never grows from being a haven of shitheads that while out at our cast. Shuren doesn't develop beyond being an area to ground the plot. It's only a flaw to me because Shuren stands out among everything else that fits back to the theme of evolution, family, and superiority. These are hulls that hold society's orphans. You could argue that Shuren attracts dangerous people, just the kind of people to survive this shit, but that'd be a waste of breath. Fortress was made for young men. Its creative staff were assembled to try their luck. They had good ideas. They worked well together. This project didn't strike gold like Attack on Titan, Kodansha's current flagship Young Man Digest. It's not bad, but it's a shallow dip. If anything, Fortress is a wonderful example of creative opportunities. It's interesting, sure, but light enough that I wouldn't recommend it beyond the genre. Simple zombie action. Thanks for listening. Thank you Manga Fox and the myriad of scan teams. Give me your 2 cents in the comments. Take a chance on the other roommates too. Those still listening, I'm gonna prattle on. I feel like pointing out the females among Fortress is only half the point. There was enough that I could support its existence, but I don't feel like I tied the knot there. And furthermore, Maeda is the main character with an arc concerned with his developing power, but I missed his subtext. Like, Maeda gets trippy dream sequences where he sees an altered form of himself. He's a child being led by a stranger. Aside from the odd imagery, Maeda's crime holds a mystery. No one believes he's innocent, and maybe he isn't. I don't know. With Maeda, I feel like there's a backdrop, an outline of a character reveal that lies in wait. Had Fortress been longer, I dare say that there was potential in Maeda that Yu Karashi had prepared to tap into, but I don't think he brought it together.